Good morning and welcome to episode 25 of our Munch&Learn session. On today's session, we have Reina Dcosta from BizLaw UK, who's going to talk to us about contracts and management. Reina, welcome to this episode.
Hi, Samak. Thank you for having me on today.
Excellent. Reina, before we go ahead, quick 30 seconds intro to who you are and what your firm is about.
So my name is Reina Dcosta. I'm a 20-year qualified solicitor, but very entrepreneurial, founder of an innovative legal and business services consultancy called BizLaw UK. If you Google us, you'll find us everywhere. We're really helping small businesses feel larger than they actually are by an outsourced in-house solution.
Brilliant. Excellent. Let's talk about contracts for small businesses. So first of all, what's the definition of a contract for small business owners or, nano business owners, and why is it so important?
So what is a contract? A contract is an understanding between two people, a buyer and a seller, perhaps, or a provider of services and a client, in terms of what is expected, what is the price, what happens if things go wrong, etc. Quite often people just have verbal contracts, or they just WhatsApp each other and say, oh, we've agreed this and that, but they haven't covered all scenarios. And then things go wrong and basically they go to court and it's really not worth the money spent. So our motto is literally prevention is better than cure. Have a proper contract right from day one when you start your startup. Have it done, drafted properly, or at least vetted properly by someone who knows what a contract should contain, and then you'll be safe and your business will thrive.
All right, sounds good. So talk to me, what are the typical, you may have service-based contracts and physical-based products, which,
Yes.
businesses sell. Let's talk about the services-based, and let's talk about very specific. You have nano businesses like trades and all, right? They go in, they do a particular job at times. Do you actually see those service level businesses actually doing contracts?
Yes, we have some clients who are in the trade sector. I mean, they, construction, etc. The problem that arises quite often is builders, for example, might say, I'm going to complete this job within, a year, and it might land up going on to 2 years or 3 years. They might, suggest that the material will cost you, a certain amount of money, and then that doubles up or triples up. And if you don't have a proper contract in place, which really holds them accountable and has some sort of a penalty clause, for example, or some, something to protect you, it can go pear-shaped. Likewise for the builder as well, if the client doesn't pay them on time to get the materials and the work stalls, then the client blames them, wants to move to someone else. They need to be protected. They need to obviously have their insurance in place and cover themselves for any liability or claims.
All right. So thanks for that. So let's talk about a typical contract, right? You're now talking about between an internal and external party of a service-based kind. What are the key areas of a contract at a higher level that a business owner needs to be aware of?
So one is the offer and the acceptance. What are you offering? What are they accepting? What is the consideration? These are the hallmarks of a contract. They also need to know what happens if things go wrong. So liability for things going wrong. How can you terminate a contract if you change your mind? What happens if there's a matter of force majeure? For example, COVID hits and your business may be an events business and you can't really hold the event because of COVID. How are you covering yourself for that? Are you refunding tickets? Are you giving them credit? Things like that. And these are the main considerations, I would say, for a contract.
Okay, great. And what are the different types of contracts that one would need to have in place when they are just about to start up their company, or for a company which is a year old?
So typically the main contract will be between the customer and yourself.
Right.
If you have a website, there'd probably be terms and conditions on your website in terms of the actual website use, which is different from the contract between your customer and yourselves, which might be put on the website as well if you prefer. Then there's the cookie and the privacy policy, which are fairly standard, which quite often your web developer might help you do. which means really you need to know what is the computer doing with the cookies they collected, how are they making use of the data they have in terms of analytics, etc. You quite often might have an e-commerce business, which is then on Shopify or Amazon or one of these platforms. So you'd need to have a contract with that platform. And in turn, that platform might have their own terms and conditions, which means you just need to check that they are suitable and they're protecting you and go ahead with their terms if that's easier. So these are some of the contracts we typically work with startups on. Of course, as your business grows, you might want to hire people and then you'll have the employment contracts. Or you might decide, I just want to work with a freelancer. So you might have a contract with a subcontractor or a freelancer to do the work. Subcontractors, if you're outsourcing the work and marking up the pricing. So there's so many different types of contracts which people don't realize or they don't know the terms for. And quite often they might mix up an employment contract with a freelance contract, and
right.
The rights are very different.
And talk to me, it's a particular area when it comes to service-based, and now with, I would say, virtual employee force, right? And sometimes they sit as far as India or Philippines, US. How enforceable are those contracts? I mean, does your firm specialize in that, and how enforceable are those contracts in terms of UK law, given those businesses or those virtual, I would say, employees are offshore?
So I would say our motto, prevention is better than cure, would really come into play in
right.
such cases, especially if it's other countries, because even if you do get a judgment against this company offshore, if they've really messed up or they've sold, say, your client's data, which is a really big thing, it's very difficult to actually enforce. We do have partners in India who can help if the offshoring is in India. But I would suggest, getting your act in place before you even start work with them, as in checking, doing your due diligence and your KYC and whatever you need, checking if they've, got good reviews, if they have contracts in place with subcontractors that they might use, that you're fully aware that, they're doing the work or someone else is doing the work, who's doing the work, and that you have, contracts in place that cover you for data protection. They have contracts with their employees, if they are larger companies, to protect them from their employees stealing the data. They probably should have cameras in place to see that no USBs are taken out of the office, etc. If it's
right.
sensitive data being, children and, people's residential and financial information, things like that.
Okay. And let's just kind of flip this over to get it internally. Now, when you have directors or co-founders, so more than one shareholder or director in the company, what kind of typical contract do you go for? Standard boilerplate contract that's available? What are the current scenarios you've seen that been asked for from your company?
So if you're an owner-managed business, you can have your own director's contract where you are the director but may not be an employee, because you might decide for tax reasons you want to take out, your profits in a pension because you're getting, income from other sources that cover your personal allowance, and that amount would then be tax-free. I think it's up to 60,000, if I'm not mistaken, per year. In that case, you could have a director's contract with yourself. That would be fine. But if you have, say, a spouse as a director, and God forbid you part ways or you divorce after some time, or a spouse who's a shareholder, you need to be careful that your contracts are properly drafted. Similarly, you might have a best friend who you think, oh, nothing can go wrong, and they are my business partners. But quite often down the line, things do go wrong. Or when one person feels I'm doing all the work and the other's doing none, or one person's put in more money than the other, and they have to part ways. So your shareholders contract will say what would happen to your shares or their shares should you decide to part ways, and what happens to all the assets of the business if you want to sell, etc.
Okay. And the last point on contracts, because I do want to touch on trademarks, is let's talk about when the company is actually seeking investment. Now, we'll go through, I would say, from a low level when they're seeking investments from friends and family to when they're actually going to investors for seeking, Series A or Series B funding. Let's talk about the bottom end of it. So friends and family.
So friends and family is obviously the first step that companies would take. We do have a link at the bottom of our website for startup funding, because startups find it very difficult to get funding. And there's a government scheme that can help them, including helping with their business plan, so that they don't really, get into trouble or go bust right from day one and waste all the money. So with regard to investment, we have people in our team who can help with EIS advance assurance, which makes your company more tax attractive to investors. Family and friends, angel investors, venture capitalists, crowdfunding, and then there's debt investment as well, which is different from equity, which was the earlier one. With the equity one, you got to give shares to the person. With the debt one, you pay interest on the loan. So we can then help with getting the investment contracts in place. If you have crowdfunding, for example, just getting all the cap tables and who's getting how many shares for how much investment. So all of that has to be put down very well in place. Quite often you might have employee shareholders as well. So, you need to have it done professionally.
Right. And talk to me about a typical scenario you've seen recently with one of your clients. Obviously, please don't name them or whatever, but where they've come to you and what's been the experience in terms of when they've had an issue with an external agency or a contract, and what are the steps both parties have taken, yourself as well as the client? If you can just say that.
So in terms of disputes and problems, some of them are, for example, over COVID, a lot of people took loans and they signed personal guarantees, not understanding or maybe understanding, but being too desperate about the implications of what would happen if the company couldn't pay back the loan and they were chased by the person who gave them the loan, maybe even as far as getting a judgment against them and getting them to sell their property or their home where their spouse might be living, their kids might be living, things right. Like that. So helping them to get out of these personal guarantees if there was any loophole or any consideration that has not been met. But it's more difficult when it's a company, because you expect company owners to be more sophisticated than consumers. And there you come to consumer contracts versus company contracts, which again have different regulations covering them. You've got to be a bit more careful when dealing with consumers directly rather than with B2B, which is business to business contracts. So that's one type of problem. Then you have shareholders and founder issues where you have, you've got to unravel and settle the matter. You have employment disputes again, which are based on contract quite often, where you go to tribunal because certain, parts of the contract have not been upheld. Quite a wide variety of right. Issues where your company's gone bust, and you've got leases where you've got to get out of the lease because you've committed to a 5-year lease and you can't afford to pay the landlord anymore. Or you've bought a business and the business is struggling, so you need to sell the business. So, things like that. And then the co-founder doesn't want to sell, issues like that.
Understood. And small business owners, they wear multiple hats. And they say, oh my God, Reina, all these contracts and all, I have to do all that. I have no clue. I'm more keen on just making money, making a profit. How long does it typically take for, all these basic level contracts to be put in place? And how do you guys, a typical law firm like yourself, helps out?
So we are not a law firm. We are a consultancy, but we have expert lawyers on the team who are freelance solicitors, part of various law firms. We can therefore provide more flexible rates to clients, and some work which doesn't need to be done, under a law firm can be done directly by ourselves, which means it will be much quicker, it will be much more cost effective, and it can be done in a matter of days. And depending on the client's budget, we can try to adjust our service levels to provide them with a solution which is not too expensive.
All right, fantastic. Let's just flip the topic over to trademarks, because that's the second part of today's conversation. Trademarks. Why should a business even bother going for a trademark? And when should a business go for a trademark?
So what is a trademark? A trademark is your brand, which you've put in sweat and blood to build. You've started marketing your brand, and then your competitor down the street decides to use that brand and get all your clients. The client Googles and sees 2 people with a similar brand, they probably won't know which is which. Therefore, we would suggest startups sign up with us or do it directly if they're savvy enough in terms of registering their own trademark. Now, with the trademark, the benefit of having a trademark vis-a-vis not having a trademark registered means that you would only have a claim for passing off, and you would have to have a lot of evidence and prove that your mark is more established than the competitor's mark if you didn't register your trademark.
Right.
And it's very cheap to register a trademark because, for maybe £500 to £600 plus the government fee of £170, you can register your brand in one class, which lasts you for 10 years. And, so I see no reason why somebody would not want to do that.
Okay.
If it's a very generic word, then it's more difficult to register, in which case you could consider registering a logo.
Okay. Let's just touch upon those key aspects because I want to dig deeper into that. In terms of trademarks, we're talking about classes, right? So just for our audience, can you explain what is a class and how the importance of it?
So there's a wide variety of numbers which form classes. Some are services and some are goods. So for example, if I'm a legal services business, I would fall under a certain class, which is a certain number. And if I'm selling maybe computers, for example, I would fall under another class. So you've got to register your trademark in the class that's relevant to your business. And quite often I've had complex clients with complex needs, and they've registered their trademark in like more than 5 classes, which then can be quite complicated if somebody else objects to that class and that registration. So what we do is we would do a basic search. We would see that there's no similar mark out there, and we would then advise the client on which classes to register with. We would then do the registration for them should they be happy to go ahead, and we would coordinate with the registry if there were any queries or any issues on that front. And even if there were third-party objections, should they happen, we would deal with those. And finally, in 4 months, you'd actually get your registration. So it is a long process. It takes 4 months at least.
Okay. And does a company based solely in UK, doing business solely in UK, need to worry about a trademark that they're creating in UK, whether it has any implications globally?
So if you're an online business, you might say, I'm actually selling to the whole world. So you might want to use the Madrid Protocol, for example, and use your UK-based mark to register in other countries that you are targeting, like perhaps India or the US. But if you're not doing that and you just want to be in the UK, that's fine as well. But you have to be mindful that, if you want to expand in the future, that mark might already be taken. Having said that, it's a chicken and egg. You can't just register your mark around the world and not use it for 10 years because you're supposed to be planning to use it, which is, the reason why you're registering it. You can't just block marks.
Absolutely. Okay. And so you have, again, product-based physical products as well as services. So physical products, well, we get it, right? So they want to put their logo or their kind of unique logo and keyword combination onto their brand product and get it out there. What about services? Where do they need a kind of trademark, which may be a series of words? And I'm talking about like small businesses. Sorry. So
definitely. I mean, if you can see Action Coach behind me on the screen, that's your trademark, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm sure that no one can actually use that brand anymore because it's been trademarked, and that can then help you to franchise your business. It can help you to get more value when you're selling your business, because if you haven't registered your trademark, your business value lowers down as well in terms of your goodwill. So it's definitely important to register for a service-based business as well.
Okay. So yes, I get it. So we are a global firm, right? But I'm now talking about trades, your local traders. Do you see typically local trades coming in, doing what do you say, a trademark? And what are the benefits of having a trademark for such a small firm? I mean, maybe even accountants also, small accountants, local accountant.
I mean, I would say that they should consider it. Maybe some of them don't have a budget, so they might get away with not doing it and, say we'll deal with the problem when it arises, if it arises. But it does arise, believe me, even with small companies, and then they don't have the budget to actually fight it, which is more expensive than actually registering your mark. I've had clients who've registered their mark, and then if someone's used it, which is a bigger company, they've just sent an email and that person has stopped using the mark. So it's as simple as that. if you've got your registered mark. That's the difference between that and actually going to court and spending thousands of pounds and getting somebody to stop using your brand if you haven't registered your mark.
Okay. Now, talk to me about the different kind of combinations of trademark, because sometimes, we'll have service-based companies. They just want to put a series of words rather than the logo combination. So typically, what should a business owner look at when he's considering doing a trademark?
So a lot of it depends on your budget. I mean, I would say if you have a very low budget, go for a logo which has words in it that covers two aspects, and go for a grayscale logo, because if you decide to change the color, again, it's fine. You can change the color. Big companies like Sky or Virgin Media might have, word marks separately registered and logos separately registered, because they're two applications and they have two application fees. And what happens with a trademark is if things go wrong, you can't correct it or get a refund. So you've got to be careful and do it right from day one, because if things go wrong, they've got to register a brand new mark.
Okay. So typically you're looking at a trademark. If are you saying that if there are color variations that you need to go for separate registration?
So it's best to do grayscale, which means you can use any color.
Right. Okay. Understood. And now talk to me about the benefits of trademark when it comes to selling a company, and what needs to be considered during that part.
Yes. So you may have heard of goodwill when selling a company. What is goodwill? Goodwill is your trademark, your recognition among your customers, your clients, where they think of you and they think of Action Coach, for example, and they know what it stands for. And it's built that brand. It's spent a lot of money on marketing that brand, and a lot of goodwill has been built with people who have done a good job for that brand, with your testimonials, etc. So when you sell your company, it's quite often is a service-based company, and it doesn't have any goods that are valued. It doesn't have an office premises. It doesn't have a lot of machinery. What does it have? It has its brand and its value, and that's what people are paying for. And it has its customer database, which is again very much attached to the loyalty of the brand. So therefore, if you have a good brand and a trademark registered, it's something that is tangible that people can actually buy off you. If you don't have that registered, it's a bit more difficult to put a value to it.
Okay, so we're obviously saying that having a trademark actually adds value, and it actually establishes some credibility out there too.
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. And talk to me about the different the time skills. Let's say a client comes to you. He says, "Hey, Reina, we have this logo. My marketing, my designers have created this logo. We have this series of words. We've had this meeting, blah blah blah, and we are ready to go. Help us out. What's the typical stages that one has to see?
So from our side, it's very quick. In the span of a week, we can do the registration once we've got the mark, etc., and we've got the payment, and then we keep in touch with you. We update you once the registry, has a look at it. Once it's published, there are different stages, and then we will update you, obviously. And once you've got the mark, and we can even monitor the mark for you to see that there's no competitor trying to file a similar mark and flag it up, so you can make an objection and prevent somebody else from trying to register a similar mark that you might feel would be confusing to a client.
And what are the time scales that one is looking at?
It typically takes 4 months for you to actually get the mark registered.
Okay.
It can be even longer if there's a complex dispute on the mark.
Okay.
But we try to avoid it by doing a few searches in advance in the hope that there will not be much of objection.
Right. Okay. And you have 4 months, and how long is your trademark valid for? 10 years, is it?
10 years, yes. And then you can renew it after that.
And what does renewal look like? Just paying the fees?
Yeah, so renewal is a much simpler process, because the mark is already registered, and you've got preference to somebody who's a newcomer who wants to have a similar mark.
Right. Okay. What's the difference between, you see, R and a TM? I've seen that. What's the difference between those two?
Yeah, so TM is typically ideally what's used once your trademark is registered. And people do use R as well interchangeably for registered. But what's more important is it should actually be registered, and you can actually find it in the registry, because you can't just put something like that, and when it it isn't really just to fob off people. That's not good enough.
Right. Okay, good. And when you're looking at trademarks right now in this, how do small businesses actually, how many small businesses actually are typically going in for that, given, again, the challenges they have?
So I think not many know about the value of it, and we're looking to educate. We work with women in business. We work with micro businesses. We've done, with Harrow Council, a free legal health check for micro businesses over COVID in the borough to help them understand the importance of all these things. And we even help businesses to license trademarks and to assign trademarks, which are contracts really of intellectual property assignment, because for example, if you have a franchise, you're actually licensing the trademark to the franchisee.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another aspect that they need to understand if they're taking on a franchise.
Okay, no, brilliant. And lastly, when we're talking about trademarks, do we need to actually, so let's talk about a typical online company selling physical products, right? An e-commerce company. Let's talk about Amazon, for example, or eBay. A business owner wants to now start, he was selling in UK. He wants to go on sell in US and Europe. Okay, two different continents, two different kind of laws that are there. What does one need? What does he need to do, or she need to do to establish that level of sales and also protect their brand?
So you'd have to register your brand. I mean, the brand would not be the products necessarily if they don't belong to you, but the brand would be the name of your shop on Amazon, and so that nobody creates a competitor shop. And then you'd need to obviously consider trademarking in those territories like the US, for example, where you have attorneys in the US who could help your UK attorney to do it there. And your contract would again be the Amazon on the platform, etc., which you probably have to agree their terms because they're too large for you to negotiate too much. But just be aware of what you're agreeing to, because quite often people blindly sign terms. They say, I don't have the patience to read it. And then when things go wrong, they say, oh, I never really read it, so I didn't know. And that's not a defense.
Right. Okay. Understood. All right. Brilliant. Karen, any questions for Reina while you were listening in?
No, not really. This is a quite interesting point. I'm totally sure. Well, my husband is a small business owner, and I'm totally sure he has no idea about this. So I'm going to tell him to have a look at this, but I'm sure again as he's just starting, he might not consider even how important this could be for his business, because he's just starting and he has all of this overwhelming thing around him right now. But yes, this is something I'm going to definitely add to his to-do list.
Absolutely. One of the typical things that we've seen with my startup clients is to get them at least brand registered. It establishes credibility, even though they're starting up. And that also helps them get more businesses out there. So for small business owners who are just starting up or have been around, something to consider. The fees are not that much, as Reina alluded to. There's also, I would say, if you don't have the time or you don't have the know-how to reach to someone like Reina, but there's also HMRC website, which is quite, I would say, straightforward to use. But then you need to understand the different classes, and also it gets a wee bit complicated.
Not HMRC. HMRC is the government.
Sorry, IPO.
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah, that's it. All right, Reina, anything you want to add on before I think we're on time.
So we're happy to offer a free legal health check to your clients or the viewers of this program. Please reach out. It's bizlawuk.co.uk. And if you Google my name or the company name, you'd know how to reach out. There's an email, there's a phone number, set up a time to have a no obligation chat. We do, consultations as well. If things go wrong and you haven't had your contracts in place, we have a team of over 200 vetted experts to help you on your journey. And if there's a dispute, we can have a 20-minute no obligation chat to tell you how we can help you resolve that dispute.
Brilliant. Okay. Karen, that may be a good thing to just put that as part of the blurb that Reina is offering a free discovery call to a no fee consultation for 30 minutes or whatever.
I'm going to definitely post that in a group.
All right. Excellent. Reina, thank you very much. Karen, thanks a lot. Have a good day, guys. Bye for now.
Thank you, Sunak. Bye. Bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
Reina.
Have a
Bye.
good day.